Hello and welcome to TelecomTV. I'm Martin Warwick and we are here at the ETSI NFV number 11 in San Jose in California. I'm very pleased to have a panel of 4 real experts with me today. We're talking about not all things NFV, but some things NFV, and the gentlemen with me are all platinum sponsors of this event. So guys, welcome, good to see you. I've met all of you except one before. So what I'd like to begin by doing is introduce you and saying who you are, and then I'm going to ask the first question to you, Arpit, if I may. So, on my far right over there is Darrell Jordan Smith of Red Hat. Next to him is Ashwin Krishnan of Brocade, and then it's Arpit Joshipura of Dell, and last but by no means least, John Healy of Intel. So, good to see you all. Thanks for being here. Right, let's make a start. Let's talk specifically, if we can. You're one of the prime movers in this, and Dell is Arpit. So tell us about Dell's plans with regard to ONP benchmarking, the enhancements on the Dell NFV platform.
Absolutely. So first of all, we're excited to host the ETSI conference here in the heart of Silicon Valley. And really exciting to see the progress that has been made in the last 6 months, specifically in 2015, not just on SDN, but NFV and the entire ecosystem and architecture, right? I've always said that, let's not make, open the new proprietary. And there's value to that statement here, where as business leaders, we all believe that the world is about open source and open standards. And with ETSI, with OPNFV, and a whole set of other standards as well as open source communities, we're big believers that a 20-year-old proprietary black box architecture will move to a generic, horizontal, open platform-based architecture, and Dell's big time behind it with the partners we have in the ecosystem.
Thank you. Two of the main trends that we see in SDN and NFV is this notion you just mentioned of the horizontal approach and horizontal solutions. Let's talk about that to begin with. What is the value, what is the main purpose of that? You mentioned open, and open being really open. Is that part of the reason for the horizontal approach? And why is it that CSPs want that horizontalism, if you like, rather than the way things used to be?
The fastest way to solve a problem is to do it yourself. I mean, we've known that in the industry forever, right? The problem is it doesn't scale, and it does not drag innovation along, right? So that's what the whole NFV ecosystem is all about. You got layers, you got the NFVI, you got the WIM, you got the VNFs and the MANO, and you have the horizontalization of this, where each of us who are experts in the areas that we all play in bring the topmost innovation, and then we all play together in an open source, open standards manner so that our customers, the carriers, benefit from it, right? It's the fastest and the most long-lasting way to get innovation in the industry. That's the horizontal approach.
Now, one last bit before we move on to the rest of the panel and leave you to sit quietly for a moment, which is the notion of collaboration. Used to be a time when people would say, companies would say, this is a one-stop shop. Come and see us, we can do everything for you, and we will provide everything from soup to nuts. Those days have gone. How important is collaboration as far as Dell is concerned and as far as NFV itself is concerned?
So Dell has always maintained and pioneered the notion of disaggregation and open, right? Whether it's PCs, whether it's servers, whether it's networking switches, right, or network function virtualization. We have believed in it, and we have maintained that it's all about collaboration. Now, telecom, 20 years ago was a 6-horse race. Okay. I won't name the players, but it's been a 6-horse race with all black boxes. Moving to NFV and moving to a virtualized world, it'll be a 3-horse race with 2 of the horses still in the black, meaning proprietary. Mm-hmm. And the third option, which is the open option, is what is being supported by this ecosystem. Okay, so again, people can interpret however they want. I don't want to sound too controversial on television, right? But the reality is, if you want a choice, and if you want open, these are the players.
Okay, well, that's fairly blunt and to the point. Okay, well, let's move on. Let's leave you to take a breather for a minute. Ashwin Krishnan from Brocade. Tell us about the accelerated work on DPDK and the accelerated functions there. So data plane development kit, what's happening there? Last time I read and spoke to people about this, it was a work in progress. Is it still?
Absolutely not. In fact, just keying off of what Arpit was talking about, when you talk about these three pillars, two being black boxes and one being white box, I think you have to look at the value proposition that you bring to the table, right? So the DPDK is a clear place of innovation where if you look at what Brocade has done, it was kind of funny, look back, Telefonica, one of the largest European operators, actually comes out with a press release unbeknown to Brocade and essentially said, in a 2-hour time span, they took Brocade via on a USB stick, and 2 hours later, they actually had performance results showing 80 gig on a single server, right? So all of that is predicated on the hard work that we've done together with Intel in particular to try and showcase what's possible. Now, since then, things have advanced quite a bit. I mean, you talked about 6 months, and 6 months is eons in this kind of environment that we are in. So we've obviously progressed very, very quickly. But I think the key piece to that is just showcasing what's possible on something away from custom silicon and generic compute. And again, this talks about horizontalization as to what's possible using just a standard VNF accelerated through DPDK.
Okay, thank you. Over to you, Darrell Jordan-Smith, Red Hat. How is work going then? Let's stick with DPDK. How's work going on with Red Hat and RHEL 7.1, which I'm not 100% sure what that is, and plus something called the patch or a patch. So explain what that is and why it's important.
So RHEL, Red Hat Enterprise Linux,
thank you,
7.1 is our Linux-based platform that we put our Red Hat Enterprise Linux OpenStack platform, our OpenStack cloud-based technology upon, that we actually sell and make available to our clients and customers. So that's what it is. It includes the work that we've been doing with the collective team that we have on the panel, including Intel around DPDK. And we built a lot of those features with these partners upstream. So from our perspective at Red Hat, we're very focused on taking industry standards and the community, open source community, and building those features upstream into the open source main trunk project, and then productizing those and bringing that down. That manifests itself in what we call RHEL 7.1. So from our perspective, that's what we actually go to market with. That's what we work with our clients on. We spent a lot of time with, we mentioned Telefonica just a few moments ago, working in their lab environment, looking at what features they require from a carrier perspective in terms of the functionality that they require, that leverages things around DPDK and other important elements that they find necessary to give themselves both carrier-grade performance and the SLAs surrounding that. And we're working with the community of service providers, the CSPs, as you articulated them, to build and prioritize what those upstream requirements are. And then we're working with the upstream community and our partners to get those built into OpenStack.
Okay, thank you. John Healy of Intel, you've been sat there very patiently. Tell us about Intel and your collaboration, specifically with regard to NFV and SDN, proof of concept collaboration with Intel.
So I think if I step back for a moment, what you've heard from the other three panelists is how this collaboration actually works.
Yes.
If you think about it, the role each of us is playing, and Arpit articulated it well, bringing domain expertise, competence, technology to this market. And really what you're seeing is a manifestation of the collaboration across the stack, the solution stack. From the platform work we do in our software, DPDK is a good example of that, the accelerating of the virtual switch using DPDK, and then upstreaming those patches into the different open source projects such that they can be downstreamed and commercialized and made available through things like Red Hat, the Red Hat Enterprise Linux that Darrell spoke about.
Yes.
That's foundational platform work that we do. And then the integration of those assets, the software and hardware assets that we have into our platform, our reference platform, is ONP, our Open Network Platform. And Arpit talked about the characterization of NFV and the workloads around on top of Open Network Platform as a way of demonstrating capability of the different workloads, the different NFV use cases. And then, of course, Brocade and the virtual network functions and the vRouter is a great example, is taking advantage of those optimizations that we've done in that underlying platform to demonstrate real usable performance to the consumer. So this is the ecosystem working together, the collaboration of partners working together to create a solution stack. And the more we worked very closely with Telefonica, we worked with several other service providers, not just in the world of telco, which is largely the focus of the ETSI effort here, but with partners and customers in different markets, in enterprise and financial services and in many in the cloud, to bring these capabilities together and implement them initially as proof of concepts, or the implementation of a specific use case. Could be a virtual router or a firewall or an intrusion protection service or a load balancer, but increasingly in the chaining of those functions together in this concept of service function chaining, to demonstrate how real chains of functions can be nested together to implement specific sets of capability that are really much more like what's done in real world networking, where you would classically have daisy chained together physical devices with cables, you're daisy chained together services in a function chain or a service function chain. So we bring together work we're doing in Open Daylight, work we're doing in OpenStack, and of course the work we've done with virtual switching, in addition to the work that's occurring within ETSI. To create that type of capability and then expose value through it. And that work is going to continue. This is the critical piece with this industry, is ensuring that these proof of concepts can be now migrated forward into their actual deployments.
Well, that's a great way to end the answer, because that's my next question to you, which is, this is a great explanation of putting the piece of the jigsaw together.
Right.
The end, we've seen the proof of concepts and the POCs and the way things are moving, and then demonstrations of how things work, etc. In the end, of course, CSPs, your customers, want to have products. How far away are those products from being a reality in terms of daily use in not just telecoms networks around the world, but other networks as well?
And Bill, Arpit, do you want to take
Yeah,
that?
so I think a year ago, the product was PowerPoint.
Yep.
Okay. 6 months ago, it was a pre-packaged, preloaded config that, instead of documentation, had engineers shipped with it, right? So that we could actually put it together.
Yep.
I would say today, it is repeatable, and if a customer wants to take it on, it's orderable, skewable, right?
Yep.
With a choice of, the hardware infrastructure, server storage, networking, with a layer of Vim, choice of OpenStack, Linux, or any other virtualized environment, the choice of VNFs, whether it's IMS, EPC, VCP, etc., all packaged, validated, reference architectured, where customers can test it. So I would say about 50 to 80 of the top carriers globally have some sort of deployments that are controlled and contained, right? But they don't come with engineers from the vendors, right? So that's the status of the industry, as of mid-year. By the end of the year, we expect, portions of the cities or metros or new developments, right, specifically greenfield, to start trialing this in real time, right? Whether it's IMS deployment or an EPC deployment, and I think we'll see the growth starting next year for the next 5 years.
Thank you.
I think when you were talking earlier about the horizontal nature of what we're trying to build and what John was talking about in terms of service chaining, Martin, I think that we're beginning to see that ecosystem come together with many different ISVs and many different partners to create some of those applications and services. And that's why it's important to have an open standard platform, an open source platform that everyone can predictably develop and build applications to.
Can I add one more thing?
Of course,
Just
please do.
kicking off of that.
So this is for?
And this might be a little controversial, but I'll start off with the non-controversial piece, right? Which is, if you look at VNFs, all VNFs are not equal, right? Certain VNFs have actually taken off faster than others. So clear example was load balancing that John was talking about. It's a $250 million TAM right now, virtual ADC. And the physical ADC is about a $2 billion TAM. So it's almost 10% of that market has actually flipped over. The thing that's a little bit controversial, but I think this is the nature of the beast, is people not over here. We talked about these black boxes, they look at NFV as well, and it's not a point lost on them. So they are chasing after this as well. This is the rub. One of the vertical black box vendors in the ADC space had their earnings call last week. The CEO goes up on stage and actually starts talking to the analysts. One of the questions coming back from, I believe it was Deutsche Bank, was, Mr. X, as the conversion from hardware to software happens, is it going to impact your top line? And guess what the CEO said? No. Why? Because a 5 gig physical appliance is costing 28,000 USD. A 5 gig virtual appliance costs 25,000 USD. So in some sense, they are looking at software as being exactly the same cost to the end customer, which is completely the opposite of what we are trying to say, which is the value and the efficiency that it brings in is actually going to be demonstrably overall lower cost to the end customer. So again, this is kind of what Brocade and the industry is calling new IP versus old IP, right? So there is literally a value proposition that is being brought to the table that is demonstrably more efficient and less cost. And then the people who've built a business on the old IP really want to stick to that model.
And he just mentioned the Capex, which is a small portion of the overall TCO, right? Which the agility and the reuse and the efficiency on OpEx, huge. Right. I mean, that's the premise of why we're all here.
Exactly so. So one message is from one side, this is going to make life easy for you. Capex, other expenses, running costs are going to be so much lower. You're going to have so much more agility, the ability to spin things up, spin things down, etc. The other side, the old IP, as you would imagine, as anybody would, say, no, things aren't going to change that much because, of course, we want to carry on making money. So when is the tipping point coming? And when do you think you're going to see the fact that the old IP players are going to say, hold up their hands and say, yes, things have changed?
So in our world, right, it's never a black and white answer, right? Because the legacy companies will protect the turf, okay? And if I was in their shoes, I would do the same, right? I think you have to look further than the short term for the answer, right? When the voice switching happened, right, there was Nortel and Lucent, and I was working in one of them, right? Well, where are they today, right? When the mainframe to x86 transition happened, right, there were a couple of companies. Where are they today, right? So the network functions and networking, we are on the cusp of that, right? With open networking, with network function virtualization, the disaggregation, horizontalization, commoditization of platform technology so that applications can be built on it. So 5 years, 10 years from now, unless the companies reinvent themselves with either acquisitions or own investment, we'll see where the road takes us. Okay.
Yeah, Red Hat, we talk about it in terms of mode 1, mode 2 type applications and services. And I think the mode 1, the black box approach is going to be around for a while. It's not going to disappear overnight. And we're quickly going to evolve into this new world because I think the dynamics and the economics and the services that consumers are requiring of their customers is really going to drive that change.
Yeah, I think it's a journey. This is never a series of, individual steps that dramatically change an entire landscape. It's a migration that's occurring across the industry, and several of the classical vendors who may have had a very hardware-centric proprietary view have also modified and evolved their business toward this inevitable change that's occurring in the industry. So it's interesting to look at some of the surveys that are suggesting where the barriers to adoption might be in scale, and oftentimes very high on the list bubbles up this need to orchestrate between an existing network and a new network. Very understandably, there are billions of dollars of existing investment in networks that have to be remain provisioned, remain maintained, and remain operational. And for that, there's an entire ecosystem supporting them today. But it's migrating toward a new form, and needing to bridge that gap is a big part of the work we need to do collaboratively as well as the industry moves, because it simply can't afford to make a single step change into a new world. But it is going to move there at a much faster pace than we've seen happen before in technology transitions that are occurring in networking. That's the real difference now, is the pace of that change and the pace of innovation.
Is the pace, first of all, sustainable? And presumably not everybody can run at the same pace, and that includes the NFV players themselves. Do you see that emerging? Do you see differences emerging, differences approach, differences in the way in which you think you can get this done in a certain time?
I think the ecosystem has expanded, not contracted, in the last 1 year, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot more startups that have come out with a value proposition, and the only reason they are around is because they now have a platform on which they can run their software application, right? Now, we're not going to talk about, an Android, 20,000, 50,000 applications, all app store type deployments, right? I mean, that's not the nature of the game on networking. But a handful of, 50, 70 applications that are really critical to running either the residential network with triple play or the business networks with private lines and services, or a combination of the two, right, for small, medium businesses. And how carriers and cable companies and satellite companies are reinventing using fundamental building blocks of SDN and NFV, right? So the ecosystem is just expanding. Obviously, you will see M&A coming up as has already happened in a few instances. But for every acquisition, a few more companies will pop in because it's an open market now.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Okay. We're drawing towards the end, but I'd like to ask a specific question about openness and open daylight in particular. You mentioned RHEL, Darrell. How are Intel and Red Hat collaborating in the open daylight lithium release? Because I've been following that quite a lot and spoken to a lot of people from the lithium side of things. It was a delayed release. Has it been the success it was hoped it would be? Have there been many glitches? And how's it going?
You want to take that first, John?
Sure.
I can.
From a collaboration perspective, one of the requirements within Open Daylight as an open source controller is that it can have the right type of test infrastructure to ensure the characterization and performance and such, and the SSSP, as they say, stable, scalable, secure, and performant. And we've worked very collaboratively with Red Hat on and participated in that function in the project group, the test infrastructure project group. And we'll continue that into Beryllium, which is the next release that's coming.
All right.
From Lithium's perspective, I think it's a little delayed in terms of its release, but the reception in the industry has been good. What's exciting about Open Daylight is how, and very specific to the work that's happening here at the ETSI effort, and its sister in OP/NFV, is the increasing integration from a collaboration perspective between these different projects. Open Daylight maybe a year ago was a very separate SDN-centric effort. Now Open Daylight as a controller is very material to OP/NFV. And so it should be, as the industry looks to say, how do I take the best of these open source projects here, not bifurcate effort and start to converge effort so we get the best return from them. And it's very much aligned to the philosophies and strategies that we're pursuing.
So we're spending a lot of time with the community as a whole because we're not a networking company per se as Red Hat, but we're engaged with a lot of the networking-based businesses that use ODL, Open Daylight, as the software element to control that puppet called the network, and we're really focused on actually trying to enable that in future releases with our partners, actually everyone here, including Intel. So and we talked a little bit about the ecosystem and the horizontal nature of what's happening in the marketplace. We're seeing many other companies pop up, as Arpit was saying, around creating those SDN controllers and some of those networking technologies that fill products that get delivered in that space.
I think the one thing to add is you may or may not be aware, so Open Daylight Summit is happening as we speak. So, it's just a few blocks.
It is down
and
the road.
and a lot of activity over there. So again, the company like Brocade, we're actually split, right? And it's actually a good thing to have because there's so much momentum happening right now that you actually have multiple significant open source events all happening at the same time.
One call for action is, as we spoke in the panel to the geeks, I would say, right, the standard folks, right, is hey guys, don't reinvent and don't repeat work, okay? As business leaders and as technologists, the not invented here syndrome needs to go, right? We have to build on each other because, one way of solving a problem might be different from another way. If it solves it, build on it, okay? Because otherwise, we will be back in the same, way where, is it ATM? Is it MPLS? Is it frame relay? Sure. Is it Sonnet? Is it, voice over IP this? Is it IMS? is it WiMAX, is it LTE? We've been through protocol wars, enough protocol wars, probably you more than us, but I'm sorry.
Very true.
But here's the reality, for NFV, we can't afford those wars. That's why we have a plea to open source community and open standards community, collaborate.
Well, if anybody should know about it, you four should. That is absolutely for sure. And if you're making a plea like it's really interesting. It's been a great little panel, actually. I'm sorry we haven't got much more time, but we haven't. So, gentlemen, thanks very much indeed. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did.
We did. Thank you.
Thank you.